Welcome to the College Admission TV podcast. Join us for insights from education leaders on today's academic landscape. We are excited to have as our guest Dr. Jeff Lemke, Vice President of Enrollment Management of Bethany Lutheran College in Mankato, Minnesota.
I always love starting off with your personal journey, and I'd love to talk to you about the mentors that helped shape your path. And I know one of those, not to steal your thunder, but I know one of those would be your father. And so I grew up playing football, and I have the bumps and bruises to show for it today. So yeah, I'd definitely love to hear about the mentors that helped shape your path.
Yeah, very good. Well, thanks, Brad. And thank you for putting this podcast together and growing this community. It's really neat to hear different thought leaders and educational leaders across the nation and their perspective on things. So thank you for kind of building this resource. Much appreciated. But yeah, my father was a great mentor of mine. We grew up moving around and fixing up high school football programs. And he sees himself very much as a football coach, 40 years plus of doing that, and state championships in 3 different states. But yet in his last calling, his last role, for over 2 decades, he was also a dean of academics. And so he was the academic leader of the institution. And I think a lot of times in higher ed, those can seem like warring entities, sports and great academics. And I just grew up never seeing it that way, that they worked very well together, that you want to show grit in both realms, that you want to meet young people where they're at. And the way that they kind of phrased that at that time was differentiated instruction. And then it was also fun. I got to work with him for 15 years and got to see him reinvent himself. So instead of all the ridiculousness of a midlife crisis, he got to reinvent himself as a coach and as an academic leader too. And that had a huge impact on me too. So as does our the president of Bethany Lutheran College, Dr. Gene Pfeiffer. He's been a great mentor for me. And I've seen him also adjust his leadership skills to what's needed at the time, as well as a few of the other VPs here at Bethany. All have been wonderful professionals that I've learned a lot from. So as are some of the topics covered on this podcast and the things that you've talked through with leaders from around the country. So,
well, absolutely, and you mentioned something that I hear very often is meeting students where they are, and so I think depending on the school and depending on the conversation, the topic, that can mean providing online, providing on campus, or maybe meeting an adult learner where where they are in comparison to a traditional age student. But can you talk a little bit about that and meeting students where they are and why is that so important?
Yeah, and I've seen that too as a emphasis of Plexus as well, just being a very student-centered organization. And I know in leadership circles it's sometimes talked about as what got you here won't get you there. And the same thing is true with being relevant to young people and what their needs are and how that changes in time and how each generation shows a little bit of a different flavor in that. And you can kind of see colleges also going through those steps of maybe avoiding some of the pits and falls of midlife crisis as colleges go into that realm. And so instead of buying the sports car, or maybe for colleges that's putting jacuzzis in their dormitory or whatever it may be, right? Instead of avoiding some of those pitfalls, to reinvent themselves and to reorientate them to what students really need and what this generation is really looking for, as well as what the workplace is really looking for right now. So that's been kind of neat to see. And Bethany's really found an emphasis in Christian media and students who develop great stories, great storytelling, and are strong communicators across the discipline, no matter what major that they go into and that they're interested in.
And so how do you make sure, when you talk about the complexity of education, admissions, and then faith-based education, obviously mission is important, but how do you educate students and families, and especially students and families in high school, and I'll throw something else out there, first generation. How do you help them navigate the waters to earning a college degree at a faith-based institution?
Yeah, I think that's one of the really challenging things of the industry is that the college experience just seems so complicated and can seem so very overwhelming to students. And so simplifying it as much as possible can be where a lot of the good effort can be. We've also seen like just some systems that try to sideline parents in the process. And whether it's FERPA or other privacy initiatives, they have a very good drive and good goals behind them. And we want to follow that intent and so forth, while still keeping parents very much in the game and very much informed throughout the process. There's other aspects too of just the party culture at colleges and that kind of indoctrination of alcohol and the hookup culture that is very prevalent at a lot of college campuses. And that's very much disguised as good college culture in this day and age. And so peeling back some of that complexity too, and keeping parents informed and moving away from some of the short-termism when it comes to looking at college and such can be a big blessing as students and parents start to work through the process. Keeping financial aid very simple or as simple as possible so that in 30 seconds a family can kind of get a sense of what this overall thing will cost them and what sort of buy-in that they'll need to have. So I think finally to maybe one other complex area is just trying to get the classes that you need in the order that you need them to graduate on time. And getting that information and getting the classes you need in the order you need them is one way that especially private colleges in America have really been a leader in helping young people and reducing some of the complexity in graduation.
Well, and I'll tell you, one of the things that I love about a private faith-based institution is community, it's relationships. And, you can speak to this, just as well, if not better than I could. Hey, Bethany may not be the place for everybody, right? Just like a public flagship institution is not the place for everybody. But, how do you make sure that, you build a relationship, because as a private faith-based institution, I am sure you get to know students and families and maybe all of them, right? In kind of a smaller setting, but more of a tight-knit setting. And so, to your point about maybe expectations of a student coming into college, what they may look for, what they may think they should be doing. How do you make sure students stay the path, and persist?
Yeah, certainly there are multiple touch points along the way, everywhere from their admissions counselor on the front end, all the way through to professors who meet with them even before they enroll and selecting their classes as they explore the majors. And then also there's a lot of different support mechanisms here in place on campus. And so Mankato is the town that we're in. So in southern Minnesota, and we're known as the Christian College in Mankato. And so there are a lot of great small communities, right around the Mankato area. And they just kind of grow to expect that personal connection and assume it'll be that way for them throughout. And so it's great that they can come to a little bit larger city here in Mankato and experience all the benefits of that, but still have those personal touch points along the way that you're talking about, Brad.
And so, when you look at competition, how does Bethany protect its backyard? How does Bethany protect its market share?
Yeah, I think just understanding what students are going through and what their process is. And we kind of look at it as what are they comparing us to and what other options they're comparing us to. And that's different really at different stages of the game, and the different types of students that we see as well. Early on, we see a lot of students at a younger age, so say freshman, sophomore year, that they're really focused on community colleges, and they've been told maybe that community colleges are the only wise investment to make. And there's a very famous public speaker, Dave Ramsey, who's done a lot of good for a lot of Christian families and financial planning. And yet maybe one of the drawbacks there is that he's kind of suggested that community colleges are the only way to go. The only wise investment to make. And I think he's offering a bit of a challenge for private Christian schools to meet students where they're at in an affordability aspect. But also what may not be talked about are some of the hidden costs of community college. And a lot of those students do return back to college at a later time in life, in some peak earning years of their life, and they have to make some sacrifices to get that college degree and to complete things. And so that's one part of the stage early on that we sometimes see community colleges very, very early on. But then there are other phases to the process too, as you're thinking about, well, what college should I go to? Maybe you just do what everyone did for K to 12 education, and you go to the school down the street that your neighbor's going to too. And to us, that's the big state schools, the big state universities. And so that's one aspect. Probably about a third of our students are considering an Ivy League school, and so are very focused on rank and feel that pressure of rank, and I need to get into a highly ranked institution. Many of those students find out that those colleges are ranked on their research ability and their research prowess, and whereas Bethany really invests in the undergraduate experience, and we're ranked highly in that realm of the experience of the undergraduate. So Ivy League, based on probably a third of our students, that's really a comparison. And then there are some great Christian colleges here in the state. Northwestern and Bethel are up in the cities, and we offer something just a little bit unique in being in a oasis, kind of a small town here in Mankato, Minnesota. And then right next door to us, we have our partner in ministry, Martin Luther College, just down the street from us. And so they just specialize in pastors and teachers. And we're very good friends with them and what they do. So that can sometimes be something that students are chewing on. So there are really all these different stages and kind of multiple steps that students are walking through as they're thinking about college, and some of that starts very early on and can go even into their first year or two of college. So,
and now, do students and families do they talk about liberal arts education, fine arts, or maybe students and parents? But what about also faculty? Do faculty drive liberal arts education? And then in your estimation, how do people respond to that?
Yeah, I think something that we really emphasize is being student first in how we accept credits from other educational institutions. So we really want to be a leader in that, in serving young people and in serving families. And as you're talking about liberal arts, we really are built on that foundation, and we cherish that as a just part of our mission and who we are. And yet we don't really use those words anymore, liberal arts, to describe who we are. I mean, our students would tell you that many of them aren't liberal, and many of them don't see themselves as artists. So they don't use those terms as much, but they very much understand kind of the mantra of that and what that whole thing means. So the way that we've really seen them embrace that is by double majoring, and it's a lot more common for them to double major and pick a few things that relate well together and provide them with a very unique skill set, and or pick up a few minors as well. And so there's been some really neat stories that have come from that and their embrace of the liberal arts, even though, maybe they don't call it that.
Absolutely. And so I'm sure campus visits, I would imagine if students and families attend a campus visit, a campus tour, the likelihood of them enrolling probably goes up exponentially.
Yeah, absolutely. They just kind of soak it all in. And I'd love to say it's something, great that they heard in admissions or from one of our professors or coaches, but they really just soak in the environment. And then they also get to talk with students and get a sense of things. And absolutely. So the visit is a big part of it.
And so what's the first question you hear from parents?
Yeah, I think a big one that they've been talking about this last year and that just jumped off the charts for us is safety, and that concept of safety. And yet it's really interesting that the meaning of safety for them is just very different than maybe how you and I interpreted safety during our college days. And it's less about, can I walk around at night safely, and will my car get messed with or any of those things? It has more to do with, are they in a safe place to explore ideas and to share their thoughts without being, say, canceled, to use a hot button issue. So to share their ideas without this overwhelming amount of criticism, and to explore their thoughts and explore their beliefs, explore their ideas. And so that's certainly one aspect of safety that really jumps out to this generation. And another one seems to be also in the realm of, like, many have grown to really appreciate, like, our same-sex dormitories. And that's just been a lot safer for both genders. And many of them have really grown to appreciate that sort of aspect to campus and that sort of experience. And so that term safety just seems like it really means something different to this generation. And it's kind of interesting how that comes out through the college experience.
And so how are you engaging in Mankato and maybe even beyond? How are you engaging with businesses so that you make sure that students are career ready? And I'll just kind of expand on that, just kind of in my experience in my kids. I have an older son who is a freshman in high school, and he's already talking about careers and should I take classes in finance, et cetera. But I think one of the things that's challenging is when you see certain degrees and titles, as a student and even as a parent, sometimes you wonder, well, what's the path to not just earn that degree, but then what do you do after that as far as a career?
Yeah, absolutely. We see that with our students too, as they kind of move through. I would say maybe 10% are thinking about going to graduate school when they start with us. And then after a few years here, almost half of them are planning to go to graduate school. And so it's really interesting to see that sort of the process, as well as just our connection here in Mankato. Our development office, our mission advancement group, they do a great job of connecting with the community and building a lot of those relationships. And then they also are connected with our career counseling group, who helps connect students with internships. So pretty much everyone does one internship, as well as, many of them do 2 internships during their time here. And Mankato is very much known as a finance place for Southern Minnesota, and a lot of the businesses that take place in more rural communities. And so that connection with businesses, as well as also listening to them and hearing what skills they need. And we've certainly adjusted some of our programs and added certain programs based on what they've needed and what they're looking for as far as skill sets. I think one of those has been just a boom in our legal studies program, and very much so as an add-on major to other areas. So, a legal studies knowledge along with something like media or engineering, where they get to know a realm of business, but also they get to know the legality aspects behind some of those business areas. So those
Absolutely.
are a couple examples. Yeah.
And so let's talk a little bit about alumni. So how do you engage alumni? And I know in some instances, if you're a part of an alumni association, and I just know for me, I'm not speaking of Bethany, but just in general, I know for me, I love my college experience, but as far as an alum, I get letters with bumper stickers and an ask to provide fundraising dollars, which, hey, I'm okay with that, but I want it to be deeper than that. I want it to be a deeper relationship. So how does Bethany engage alumni today?
Yeah, and maybe just extending off of what I was just talking about with career readiness and launching students as they go forth. We do have a alumni mentor program that students get to know an alum, and some career mentoring as well as just life coaching along the way. So that's been a great way where alumni can mentor and share their expertise going forward. And so that's been fun to see. But yeah, our alumni director who coordinates all of that, he's always talking with us cabinet members about, wow, you got to give us substantial things that are going to affect the vision of the college that I can take to our alumni and talk with them about, and visit with them about, and engage them on, and get their feedback on, so that they have a real meaningful impact here at Bethany. And so we love to do that, and he challenges us to include alumni on every step of the way as we plan the vision of the future for the college.
Absolutely. What was your dissertation on?
Yeah. My dissertation was on international students. So I was with a lot of public school superintendents, and so I was kind of the weird private school guy, and I have a big heart for international students and why they come to America to study, and why there are these flows around the world. And so that was a lot of fun to really get to know that dynamic of education through the dissertation. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So how does Bethany Lutheran, how do you embrace international students?
Yeah. They've really been a tremendous blessing to our campus, and have really increased the educational quality here at Bethany. So we're about 20% international from about 30 different countries. And I think small colleges are really well positioned, and private colleges are positioned well to provide something very unique for international students, just because they run into so many barriers coming to the USA and coming to college. And so we're able to make some small adjustments just to help overcome those barriers. So at many universities, they just accept that there's a high dropout rate of international students. And even some of them, when you talk to them about housing plans for international students, sometimes the housing plan is simply couch surfing. So no formal network, we just expect they'll be on someone's couch for the time being. And so there's really an opportunity to serve those students well, and to provide some real solutions. And there's always hidden barriers to it, the paperwork and the government stuff. I think one of the big things that educational leaders don't talk about as much, and the government doesn't either, is just that a lot of times America gets blamed for visas being denied and for students not getting visas. And really, it's the American government that is following the law and following the rules and what the sending country wants. And so we found that if students are more well off and they have liquid assets, that country really does not want a wealthier family to leave the country. And so that can be where you run into some challenges in getting a visa. And so yet it's a lot easier for their sending country to blame the American government and say, hey, that's why you're not getting a visa. And so there's little hidden things like that throughout the process that you run into. And yet I think all of us can agree, both parties, it's a very volatile subject, but I think we can all agree we really want legal immigration. It's a foundation of America. And some of these students are really working hard to do things the right way, and we want to support them in that.
So is it a requirement to be a Minnesota Vikings fan?
No, we actually have a lot of Packer fans. So that's our next country here is, or state, I mean, is Wisconsin. And so there are some big Packer fans here on campus. And so they struggle, to root for those Vikings in their first few days here. But when they see the red and white rather than some purple they have to wear, they're good with it. But yeah, there are a lot of Minnesota Viking fans, but yeah, it's been a rough year. So not for the purple kind, not for the red kind. We're humming. So
well, I'll tell you, it's hard to not like Kirk Cousins, especially after the quarterback show that he was a part of.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if you had a chance to look at that. So.
Yeah. I mean, he's a great Christian dude and just a great guy to have in Minnesota. And so, yeah, what an athlete who's also just a leader in a number of areas. So that's been kind of cool.
Absolutely. So where do you see Bethany Lutheran in 5 years?
Yeah, I think we'll continually reinvent ourselves and relook at things. It can be very easy to always kind of look at, well, what new things should we start? What new things should we be doing? And we do want to look at that. And it's been a lot of fun to have that as a part of my role, to look at some of the new things and to launch some new things. But I think even more so, it's about reinventing yourself and reinventing the college. And we've seen that too with some of our fine arts directors. I mean, you and I were very used to seeing coaches on the front lines of recruitment and new student engagement. And yet there's a lot of opportunities for fine arts directors, your choir leader, your band leader, to be out there in front and engaging young people way on the front end. And so it's been exciting to kind of start working with that with the college and to see the fruits of that labor. The new generation would maybe, they're into TikTok and short form videos and that sort of stuff. And I think some of our fine arts directors are doing a great job of like, hey, we're going to span the generation from orchestra hall to the TikTok generation. And we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. So.
Well, excellent. Well, Dr. Jeff Lemke, hey, thank you so much for your time. This has been very educational, and I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Brad. It's been a joy to visit with you, and all the best on the next conversation that you have.
Enjoyed this episode of the College Admission TV Presidential Podcast. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll bring you another insightful conversation with a distinguished leader in higher education.